Okay.
Says we're good.
Okay. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tullahoma. Thank you for joining us this morning on Zoom, on YouTube, or in person. And we welcome you all to come in person every Sunday. We are open. Of all the gifts in the world, for love, we are grateful. Of all the gifts in all the world, for helping hands, we are grateful. Of all the gifts in all the world, for food, we are grateful. May we remember that the best gifts don't arrive wrapped in papers or bows. For love, helping hands, food, and so much more, we are grateful. And now the chalice lighting. Carrie? Thank you. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also, to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together. Thank you, Carrie. This is the time for announcements. For those of you who do attend in person, if you have a COVID diagnosis in the next week, please contact a member of the board and let us know so that we can inform the other in-person attendees for their own safety. Next Sunday's speaker is James Nehan. He will be here in person, and the title of his talk is, "This World Just Takes My Breath Away." If you would like to donate to our church, please make a check payable to the UU Church of Tullahoma and send it to our post office box, which is P.O. Box 331, Tullahoma, Tennessee 37388. You can also drop a check or cash in our donation box at the end of in the back of the sanctuary, or you can give me your check or money since I'm the treasurer, and I will make sure it gets to where it's going. Are there any other announcements? Jim?
So yes, have a few. We do have a board meeting after service today. So just letting you know that's going on. We have a lot, looks like a full agenda, a lot to go over. As far as COVID numbers, it appears we are definitely over the hump with this Omicron's variant. The numbers, it's a week-old data. It's as of yesterday, it's basically 75 cases. A week before that, it was 212. It looked like it peaked about 3.5, 4 weeks ago. So for this round, this variant, we appear to be definitely on the downhill side. And finally, we will have a vacancy on the board starting July 1. Carrie has said she's going to be not running again, not having her name on the ballot. So if you're interested in serving on the board in the role of vice president for programs, please get in touch with me or any board member for that matter, and let us know of your interest. So that is it, Karen.
Thanks, Jim. Any other announcements for the Zoom people?
Well, that would be me.
Okay, Tom?
I just did a COVID test, and guess what? Showed up positive.
I'm shocked.
Yeah. So anybody that's had any contact with me, just be aware. I don't know.
You doing okay?
I'm fine. It's just like a bad cold. It's getting better. It was, and my max temperature was a little bit over 98, but not much. Because it was a Friday, Saturday, today, Sunday. And I'm getting much better now. So.
Okay.
Take care, Tom. That's
sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that, Tom.
Well,
I don't think our brief contact there.
No, I think we're fine. I think you're.
What is Ricky's normal week?
Next week.
Okay. And Ricky has informed Carrie that he will no longer be in the rotation for service leaders. So we will need a service leader, and he was scheduled to be here next week. So if anybody would like to come and be a service leader, it's very easy. Because I just filled in this morning at the, Carrie gave me everything I needed. including all the readings. But it's really easy, so if you're interested in being a service leader, let Carrie know. Any other announcements? Yes, John.
Trivia. I don't know if any of you have gone to the trivia night that is held annually in February. But there'll be one Friday night, and if you feel trivial, then it would be a good opportunity to join the other people from the church who will be there.
They've got 3 more. I should
call
Vicky and ask her if she...
The trivia, did you hear John? Folks, did you hear him?
Yes.
Okay. The trivia will be at Trinity Lutheran Church, and there has been an email sent out around about it. Just contact either Bill Boss or Doug Traversa. I think it's $10 fee, and they have, this time I think it's unlimited chili. All you can eat chili, and then a night of trivia, during which there's prizes. So, it's always a lot of fun. Any other announcements? Yes, Rick.
I'll just add to that the proceeds will go to support the Hands-On Science Center.
Oh, great. Thanks, Rick.
And it's also to help senior citizens get over there and that sort of thing too. That's same thing. Rick's right, absolutely right now.
Great. I forgot that part. Any other announcements on Zoom? No. Any other announcements here? No. All right. Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to sit in silence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for all those in our lives who have brought us warmth and love, to give thanks for the gift of life. We know we are on our pilgrimage here, but a brief moment in time. Let us open ourselves here, now, to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on this earth. And now it is time for our speaker, who will be Carrie Hawk, who is filling in and reading a sermon that she has gotten from the UUA. The title is White Supremacy and Beloved Community. Carrie?
Good morning. Thank you, Tony. If you come, you get to see all the neat little things that go on while we're trying to figure out what we're doing. So it could be very entertaining.
Rabbi Rami is not there. Carrie is actually reading it.
A couple of weeks ago, since I'm service leader, I try to find really interesting readings to use, and I've been using the UUA website. There is so much on that website. I just love going there. And I had found there were sermons on the site, and I thought, well, if we ever have a cancellation, maybe I could read one of them, or somebody else could. But it was really late last night when I found out that Rabbi Rami wasn't going to be coming. And we're really lucky I found out, because I don't usually check my email late in the evening, so I was glad that I had checked it. But I went back and looked at some of the sermons that I had found, and one of the things is timing. You know, can I read it in the amount of time we have, or that sort of thing. So I found one that sounded really interesting. It's by Amanda Eudice Kessler, and I wasn't able to really pull up a bio on her, but God, there's information on her. She is a hymn writer for liberal churches, and one of her songs, "The Church Where God Lives," was used by the Methodist Church in 2021, I believe, for their the Western jurisdictions meeting. And it's in a lot of hymnals. She has songs that are in a lot of hymnals. So, white supremacy and beloved community. Unitarian Universalism is currently taking a profoundly important step in committing to work as an entire body, a beloved community, against white supremacy. In order to make this commitment as effective as possible, it is important to reflect on the internal struggle that we who are white may undergo as we come to recognize, accept the reality of, and commit to working against white supremacy. These responses and emotions can halt us in our tracks, or we can recognize them and work with them to enable ourselves to move forward and to support each other along the way. We might view this process as a set of stages. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross suggested there are 5 stages in grief. In contrast, one might envision at least 11 stages of emotional struggle around accepting white supremacy as a white person. The stages don't always happen in order. They can overlap, and we may move back and forth between them. They are denial, resistance, discomfort, defensiveness, guilt, fear, paralysis, anger, sadness, resignation, and commitment. Even those of us who are further along than denial may not be living in commitment full time, but we may be there part of the time, and we can work toward being there more of the time. How do white people first engage with white supremacy? Often we don't. We reject the idea that racism is still present and harming people. We say, we've had a black president. How bad could it be? We say that Oprah seems to be doing pretty well, and ignore the fact that upscale jewelry stores have refused to let her in, since black people surely don't have enough money for expensive jewelry. We say proudly that we are colorblind, and that we don't care whether people are white, black, yellow, red, or purple, signaling by our mention of purple people that we are not taking the whole matter seriously. The stage of denial may not involve deep-seated unconscious inability to see what's right in front of us. We may simply be insanely busy and focused on our day-to-day lives. We may be struggling with our own challenges. We may well be ignorant of the depth of continuing white supremacy today. Once we confront the reality and enormity of racism, we may move to resistance. We don't want this to be true. We are being forced to see what's going on, and we hate and resent it. Thank you very much. Our path through resistance may feel like an adult temper tantrum, minus the actual kicking and screaming. After we've spent some time resisting the reality of white supremacy, we may become uncomfortable. We start figuring out the implications of racism for our own lives. We may wonder whether we are bad people, or what our friends of color think of us, or whether our successes have always been due to our hard work and talent, as opposed to preferential treatment. Perhaps it's not surprising, then, that distress may lead to defensiveness. My family didn't own slaves, we might say. I have black friends, we might say. I would never use a racial slur, we might say. The list goes on, but it's all in service to our attempts to rescue our wounded feelings and say that at some level, this is not all about us. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, it is about us, because who else could it be about? Once we cannot avoid that fact, We may find that we struggle with guilt. Guilt because we benefit from white supremacy. Guilt because, truth be told, we like not being stopped by the police when we're doing 50 in a 45 an hour zone because we are late for church. Guilt because we could be resisting racism more actively than we are pretty much all the time. Guilt that we resent having to deal with the topic at all. Then there's fear. We may be afraid of appearing racist. We don't want to say the wrong thing in a social justice context and embarrass ourselves. And we may fear what will happen if we start taking personal responsibility for working against racism. We think we might become that person, the one who awkwardly interrupts racist comments and jokes, the one who calls people out, making them uncomfortable and becoming uncomfortable ourselves, the one who might risk friendships, family relationships, even jobs, to point out racist words and actions in front of us, promulgated by people we love, people we respect, and people who pay us. At about this point, we might find ourselves emotionally immobilized, paralyzed by a combination of helplessness and hopelessness. We know that having good intentions about being part of the solution means very little on its own. We want to do the right thing, and sometimes we succeed, but not often enough, it seems. The enormity of racism, the horrific power of its impacts on people of color, and the relatively little that it seems we can do come together. But we may eventually break through the paralysis and get to some pretty deep anger. Anger at the systems that hurt people. Anger at the individual people who either hurt people, who hurt other people. Anger at the people who don't see the harm, or perhaps do see it but don't seem to care about it. Anger that this commitment to work for racial justice is so hard, even if it is definitely the right commitment to make. Anger that every time the country takes 2 steps forward on racial equality, it takes at least 1 step back. And unsurprisingly, underneath everything else we've yet encountered is deep, abiding sadness. Grief for light years. Sadness that white supremacy ever came to pass at all. And grief at the suffering endured by people of color. Sadness that some people feel so disrespected that they have to find someone else to look down on. Sadness that the many and profound gifts that people of color have to offer the world are in many cases not available because the individual in question is not able to get a good education, or they experience violence, or they encounter the criminal justice system and are treated unfairly by it, or aren't taken seriously and are seen as culturally inferior. Eventually we get to resignation. We can deny it. We can resist it. We can rage or cry. But there it is, white supremacy. How we feel about it is beside the point. Our intentions are beside the point. We trust good evidence, and the evidence is compelling, both historically and in the present. White supremacy is real. So now what are we going to do? We can't unlearn what we have learned. We have to agree to be uncomfortable for the rest of our lives. And we are as fine with that as we can be. And finally, we began to reach the closest thing to a final stage, commitment. The willingness to stay in solidarity, to keep learning, to keep listening, to keep contributing where we can. It can be hard to stay in this zone, but once we have had a taste of commitment, we know for sure how important this work is, and we keep returning to it. denial, resistance, discomfort, defensiveness, guilt, fear, paralysis, anger, sadness, resignation, commitment. These are places we may find ourselves as we move from cluelessness about racism to a degree of understanding and a pledge to be a part of the solution. Moving through the stages of confronting both the racial structures of society and our place in them is profoundly difficult. But fortunately, we don't have to do it alone. In fact, we can't do it alone. If we work together, we can support each other in our difficult growth processes and our understanding of white supremacy, and in our willingness to be in solidarity with communities of color. We, the beloved community, can respond to those among us who are in denial about white supremacy by gently and non-judgmentally being witnesses to its reality. We can bring up the topic. We can talk about our own experiences of understanding ourselves as colorblind and describing what changed. We can comment on racism as it appears around us. We can ask questions that reveal the double standards hidden in some kinds of talk about race, such as inquiring when someone mentions black on black crime, why they're not also talking about white on white crime, since almost all crime is interracial due to racial segregation. Intraracial. These actions are difficult to take, and we are likely to be uncomfortable taking them. But if our actions make one life easier, freer, or richer, our discomfort is worth it. We, the beloved community, can respond to those among us who resist the reality of white supremacy simply by being good listeners, providing an open and non-anxious presence for them. And this can continue into the phase of discomfort and defensiveness. We, the beloved community, can respond to those among us struggling with the guilt related to being white in a white supremacist society, both by being supportive and by pointing out some realities that can be helpful. It is only human to be grateful for inequality when it benefits us. It is only natural to resent having to spend our precious time, money, and energy trying to end something that we did not ask to exist in the first place. It is only reasonable to react with stress when we can't hold back the ocean with a toy bucket and feel that we should try harder, even if we know it's not sustainable. If we can jettison our guilt, we will be more free to take up responsibility for being a part of the solution. We, the beloved community, can respond to those among us struggling with fear by telling our stories and showing how we got through difficult situations, whether those situations involve falling on our face in front of activists of color or having a painful conversation with a friend or relative. For many of us, when it comes to fear, the only way out is through. We might make fewer mistakes over time, and as for those difficult conversations and experiences of calling people out, the second time we might be less afraid, and the third time we may be less afraid still. We, the beloved community, can respond to those among us struggling with paralysis, immobilization, helplessness, and hopelessness by pointing to the historical successes of the civil rights movement and the multitudes who fight on today. And we ourselves can be models for action, however modest and preliminary. Doing anything is better than doing nothing. We know this and we can demonstrate it. We, the beloved community, can respond to those among us struggling with anger and sadness and resignation in the same way as we respond to some of the earlier stages, with good listening, gentle support, and great compassion. We love each other through the difficulty and into acceptance of and engagement with white supremacy in the many ways we might work against it. And so finally, we, the beloved community, welcome those who have reached the stage of commitment, even as we struggle to stay committed ourselves. We care for one another and encourage one another, and we celebrate progress and mourn the continued losses and keep at it day after day, year after year. When we, as the beloved community, make these promises and act on them, we join the prophetic people who make up the history of Unitarianism and Universalism, and those who are hard at work in today's Unitarian Universalism. And with these promises and actions, we proclaim our commitment to a world bursting with joy for all people. A world where people of color do not need to confront racial slurs, discrimination, or violence. A world where no one needs to specify that Black Lives Matter because it's so patently obvious that they do. We don't live in that world yet, but we are working our way toward it, one person at a time, one action at a time, one stage at a time, and we are taking care of each other on the way. By confronting the reality of white supremacy head on, we've built a world where such white supremacy is only a bad memory. So may we build this world alone and together every day of our lives. Amen and blessed be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Carrie. On the fly, you did a great job. Great talk. I have some closing words. Eternal wellspring of peace, may we be drenched with the longing for peace, that we may give ourselves over as the earth to the rain, to the dew, until peace overflows our lives as living waters overflow the seas. As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return. Thank you for joining us. We will take a break, and then we will have a discussion about Carrie's talk. Let's see, 10 minutes, I guess, break. We'll come back at 10 minutes until 11. Thank you. Did I do everything?